from the studio gym where excuses never apply. It's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of Superhuman Radio. We have a great show, very fast-moving show planned today. During the first half hour, we're going to be joined by Dr. Hector Valenzuela to talk about curcumin supplements, and in my humble opinion, the only curcumin supplement worth taking on the planet Earth. Okay, we know some of the many benefits of curcumin. We've talked about curcumin over the years on this show as one of the foundational supplements that you should be considering. My next guest is Dr. Hector Valenzuela. How you doing, Dr. Valenzuela?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, and this is, we have a short time to cover this, so we're going to try to do this in the Reader's Digest version. But for those out there who aren't already aware of the research being done by fantastic institutions into the benefits of curcumin, you want to just give me a short list of some of the things that have been shown to be affected in a positive way by curcumin supplementation?
Oh, yes. Curcumin, for example, is well known for being an antioxidant. So it deals with free radicals and diminishing them so that we stay a little bit healthy. In addition to that, curcumin is also known to work as an anti-apoptotic, anti-proliferation, anti-cell-adhesion. And basically what all that means is that it is reducing the chances of us developing cancer.
Cancer, right.
So in addition to that, curcumin is also known as an antimicrobial. So it's been shown to reduce infections of both bacteria, viruses, and parasites. And I would say that those three are some of the big ones. In addition to that, you would also see that curcumin has worked to decrease certain types of degenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
Yes.
So
yes.
It
arthritis,
basically covers the whole gamut.
Yeah, arthritis. The different areas of research within the cancer community showing oncoprotective effects of curcumin runs neck and neck with some drugs out there, and it's in every area: breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer, and so on. Depression has been shown to be affected by curcumin supplementation. Diabetes, arthritis, overall immune system function. A couple not so well-known studies that we've actually talked about on this show as it relates to human performance, but glycogen resynthesis as well as mitigating fatigue during very, very strenuous workouts that are very, very demanding. So for those out there who are looking for the sexiness of a performance-enhancing drug, curcumin has been shown to do some really novel things for both endurance and strength athletes. It's really just one of those things. It's magic. It's like, because we find it in nature. Now, the magic lies in something called curcumoids, correct?
That is correct. So curcumoids are basically derivatives of curcumin, and these are compounds that are fairly good at, affecting different types of cell signaling pathways within the cells that affect all of these, in turn, affect all of these pathways that enhance your fitness of the cell and therefore the fitness of the tissue and therefore the fitness of the organism.
Now, doesn't curcumin interact with the valenoid receptor, which has also been shown to be stimulated by a variety of other natural compounds that actually could help mitigate depression?
That is correct. Yes.
So, we're talking about something that, and we also should remember that curcumin probably found its popularity as a medicinal in Ayurvedic medicine, which is 4,000 years old now? Is it older than that? I forget.
It is several thousand years old. So the people from India and from China have been using it for thousands of years, and they've been obtaining that from a plant called Curcumina longa, which is the producer of curcumin and its natural derivatives.
And this plant, has it changed over the years at all?
Not as far as we know. I mean, all plants naturally evolve to some degree, but this plant has been used to isolate what we now know as the commercial turmeric that contains the main components, that which curcumin is the main one and the most potent one.
Now, what is some of the research you've worked on directly with curcumin?
So I study the aging of the immune system. So I like to see how curcumin has these anti-inflammatory responses. So it can actually curtail an immune response, a harmful immune response. And as you may well know, many of these responses that are inflammatory in nature are the causes, are some of the culprits actually, of how we develop cancer, of how we have even to some degree Alzheimer's disease. So
even diabetes, there's even discussion amongst the diabetes community that's been going on for the past 3 years now of the chicken and egg. Does diabetes beget inflammation, or does inflammation cause cellular communication to start to fail? And part of that cellular communication is insulin's effect on cells. Does the inflammation precede type 2 diabetes, or does type 2 diabetes promote inflammation? But there's quite a few people on both sides of that fence.
Yes. Your analogy is perfect because there are components of inflammation that promote diabetes, and in turn, diabetes as it increases in severity, also increase inflammation. And it has to do somewhat with cytokines, the chemical messengers that relay this information that help activate the inflammation to begin with, are augmented with diabetes.
And to take inflammation just north for a second into the brain, we've done three shows on well done studies that have now linked not all major depressive disorders, but some depressive disorders, probably a large number of undiagnosed major depressive disorders that are actually caused by inflammation. Inflammation in the brain, but more importantly, inflammation in the body. Because what inflammation does, when the body sees inflammation is necessary. In fact, it was one of our acquired benefits, if you will, through the evolutionary process, because it stimulates repair. But,
that's correct.
But
yes.
The problem is that in today's modern society, which we're mismatched for, we're bombarded with toxins and lifestyles and diets and God knows what RF is doing to us and so on and so forth, that seems to keep our inflammatory process at its heightened point all the time, round the clock. The body knows when inflammation is there that the body is sick. When the body is sick, it wants to lay down. We think of depression as just being sad, but it also is depression of motor resources as well, not having energy, can't get out of bed. And so what they're discovering now is that people who that are chronically inflamed, the body is acting appropriately by becoming depressed to save resources to heal the problem. And so depression in this case is a necessary evil. However, the alarm system is being triggered unnecessarily. There's no reason for the person to be triggering this response, because this chronic inflammation is something that should not be there.
That's correct. So inflammation evolved to protect us, right? So as you mentioned right there, that inflammation will promote cell tissue repair. So physical damage, signals that are harmful to us will trigger inflammatory responses. There is a whole slew of different components in the body that will trigger inflammation. And that's why inflammation is so important for many different diseases, because in one way or another, that those responses, those damages, even though they may seem completely unrelated to what we think of inflammation, the swelling of the tissue, are actually immune responses. So in my research, we're looking at the cells, the human cells, T cells, and how they respond to inflammatory signals. So we activate the cells, and then we see how long they can live in culture. So my research involves using curcumins to see how the inflammatories or the response of the cells is actually modulated by curcumin and some other anti-inflammatory compounds as well.
Now, okay, so since you mentioned T cells, is there research being done in things like atopic dermatitis and stuff? Because we know that's an deployment of T cells quite often that causes people who have severe eczema and even some dermatitis to develop the scaly lesions on their skin. Any research in skin disorders and curcumin?
Oh, yes, there is. So psoriasis is technically a pro-inflammatory skin disease. And curcumin has been used to treat people that have these lesions. So patients with psoriasis were divided into one study that comes to my mind is they were divided into two groups, and one was given the curcumin, and the other one was not. It was given a placebo. And after about 2 to 6 weeks of treatment, the patients that were suffering from psoriasis had a 90% reduction in the incidence of their disease. So that was one of the, I would say, landmark studies that were done on psoriasis. Very simple, very straightforward, and yet it produced tons of data. And this really put curcumin into the map more on skin disorders based on this pro-inflammatory regulation that curcumin has on.
Okay, so curcumin is wonderful stuff.
Yes,
people cook with it, right? Does cooking with it denature it, Dr. Valenzuela?
Not as far as we can tell. So curcumin is added as spice to many different types of foods. The curcumin is detected in their bloodstream, so therefore it must be having some type of effect. And the very fact that people use it in their food consumption means that the mechanism of how they're getting it into their body does not have too much of damage to it, because it's being consumed and it's being used for the very to treat many of these diseases. But
the like, for instance, the study that really put curcumin on the map, so to speak, within the mainstream media was one that was done on a very advanced form of curcumin that's supposed to have a higher bioavailability than just what you could take, and the therapeutic doses it delivered were required to affect Alzheimer's development. Those therapeutic doses are much higher than we could consume in our diet, right?
Yes. So what I'm referring to is that you can barely detect it there. I mean, it is detectable. It is less than what we refer to as 1 micromolar concentration in the bloodstream, which is a very, very, very low amount. And the other issue is that it would be cleared from the bloodstream very, very quickly as well. Within 3 hours, it's not detectable at all. So in order to have those studies that you're mentioning, to have levels that can be detected, you would have to take very, very large amounts that you can't normally get from different places.
Here's what I want to do. I want to go ahead and take our break now, because when I come back, I want to start discussing bioavailability, because obviously if curcumin can do all these wonderful things for us, and just taking, some amount of curcumin may or may not achieve therapeutic levels. I'd like to come back from the break first and talk about what therapeutic levels are, and then ways of actually achieving those levels. We're talking right now with Dr. Hector Valenzuela. He is a professor of biology over at Whittier College in California. We're talking about the magic of curcumin. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
If you take curcumin, you need to pay attention. The best curcumin on earth is MetaCurcumin. MetaCurcumin is up to 277 times more bioavailable and absorbs over 6 times faster than standard curcumin supplements. MetaCurcumin even outperforms those supposedly high-performance curcumin products. There's only one MetaCurcumin by Rev Genetics. You could save 20% off MetaCurcumin by clicking the banner ad at SuperHumanRadio.com and use SuperHumanCurcumin at checkout. If you want to help stop inflammation in its tracks, you need MetaCurcumin by Rev Genetics today.
This is the Superhuman Channel. Evolution just got kicked up a notch.
Brothers are amused by other brothers' raps.
Welcome back. So we're talking about curcumin, the magic of curcumin. It is absolutely one of your foundational supplements you should be taking. And you can spend a lot of money on a lot of curcumin supplements and not be getting what you want. And we're going to talk about why that is now. So We're talking right now with Dr. Hector Valenzuela. He is a professor of biology over at Whittier College in California. We're talking about now, as we get into it, what are therapeutic levels? How do you measure therapeutic levels, Dr. Valenzuela? What are they millimoles per, a liter? How do you measure them?
Yes, you can do it via millimolars per liter. So the idea is the following. We know that all these people have been taking it for thousands of years, and that it has some type of remedy, otherwise they wouldn't be taking this product.
Right.
The problem is that when we started doing studies in general, there have been, for example, over 100 clinical trials here in the United States alone involving curcumin. The problem is that people quickly realized was that it was not being absorbed in enough quantities to make a difference. So when they would take blood from these donors, they would notice that the curcumin was always less than 1 micromolar concentration in the bloodstream, which was indicating to the scientists that A, it was not being consumed properly, and B, that when it was being consumed, that it was being biodegraded very quickly as well. So as all things, when we consume them, they go through our digestive tract. They get absorbed there, and they get into the bloodstream. And it's when it's in the bloodstream and circulating through our body that it's going to have some type of effect, positive effect, on our cells. And here's where the problem then began. So everybody started looking at different forms of delivering this compound. One of the very popular ones would involve using nanoparticles or liposomes or micelles or
bipyrene. They were using forms of pepper, bipyrene, which is used in a lot of supplements, supposed to increase bioavailability of supplements, and so on and so forth. Now, but where does the magic start in therapeutic levels? If only 1 millimole per liter was being discovered in a lot of these people's blood, when we look at the research that shows therapeutic benefits of a curcumin supplement, where are their blood levels going in the mole or how do you, whatever the saturation level is?
Yes. So when people were consuming commercially available curcumin, the regular kind, you would reach no more than 1 to 2 micromolar concentrations in the bloodstream.
Okay.
Only if you consume amounts that were, extremely large, like 12 grams.
Oh, wow. 8,000. That's 8,000 milligrams. 8 grams
exactly.
is 8,000 milligrams, right? Okay.
Anywhere between 12 to 8,000 milligrams. 12,000 to 8,000 milligrams.
Okay.
That's correct. So in order for us to be able to get the best results, we have this new formulation that we tested, MetaCurcumin, where we were able to increase the amount of curcumin that was getting into the bloodstream. So we were getting results that indicated that 277 fold increase of curcumin was getting into the bloodstream when compared to the regular commercial curcumin.
And what is that? What did that translate into millimoles per liter?
Millimoles per liter. So it would reach the equivalent of 84 micromolar concentration.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes.
I mean that's 42 times the levels that you saw with just regular curcumin. Now there are some other enhanced curcumin products out there. How does MetaCurcumin compare to those?
So MetaCurcumin, when compared to those, was still a much greater,
concentration
difference.
Right.
So I would say that the two next runner-ups would be 1/10 of the amount of MetaCurcumin.
Now, what about those out there who say, more is good, a certain amount is good, but more is not better? Is there evidence that the higher the millimolar reading of the curcumin in the bloodstream, does it in fact enhance the therapeutic benefits we're looking for?
Yes. Okay, so let me explain that a little bit more. So when you're talking about things that you are consuming, there's a couple of things that you have to keep in mind. First, that you're in a fair comparison in terms of different compounds would be that you have to add the same amount. correct? So you are also administering those compounds in the same way. So in this particular case, it would be oral consumption. So if you're comparing the same amount and administering the same way, same mechanism, then whatever gets in your bloodstream would be how you would compare the relative amounts of how efficient you are at delivering this compound.
Right.
In our product, if we were to compare a 1-to-1 of their compound with our compound and it gets into the bloodstream, our compound gets at much, much higher concentrations than the regular commercially available curcumin.
But also better than the more advanced curcumin products as well.
That's correct. We would be at least tenfold higher.
Right. So, and I want to keep hitting that hard, because the reason I want to keep hitting that hard is because if you take curcumin, like I do, and I've been taking curcumin for a long time. I used to buy the Sabinsa standardized C3 Curcumin products, and I stopped when I found out about MetaCurcumin, because if you take curcumin, you're already convinced of the benefits of curcumin. Then the goal now has to be, what is the best curcumin product I can take for the dollar? Let's face it, if it's $1,000 a month, you're not going to take it. And there's nothing better than MetaCurcumin. And that's why we brought them to the show as a sponsor, quite frankly. Because a single serving of MetaCurcumin is like taking 23 grams of regular curcumin, and or tenfold better than any of the advanced curcumin products out there. And it's far less expensive than most of the advanced curcumin products out there on top of that. It just doesn't get any better.
Absolutely. And there's some other added benefits by getting this the curcumin into the bloodstream. The MetaCurcumin actually will get into your bloodstream at a much faster rate, so the absorption is extremely fast. Other compounds will take, on average, anywhere between 4 to 7 hours. MetaCurcumin will get into your bloodstream within an hour, or about approximately 1 hour.
And the area under the curve of the length of time that the curcumin metabolites show up in the bloodstream is prolonged compared to the other curcumin products.
That's correct. So this is an indicator of how much is actually
not being degraded.
Not being degraded. That's exactly. So it's gone into your bloodstream at a very high concentrations, and then on top of that, it stays in your bloodstream for a prolonged period of time, which would benefit the effects of curcumin on your cells.
So we have to end the interview, and I want to end the interview with a call to action. For those of you out there who aren't convinced about curcumin yet, go do some more research. You will be. And for those of you who are already buying curcumin products or have been thinking about it, not only is MetaCurcumin on sale right now on top of everything else at a lower price than it normally is, and it's already intelligently priced, but our audience saves an additional 20% off by using the coupon code SuperHumanCurcumin. You can go to SuperHumanRadio.com. There's a big banner ad floating on the right-hand side of the website that you can click and be immediately transported right to their page. Dr. Valenzuela, I want to thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Okay, take care.